Hello, good evening, and welcome to this CPDme webinar. My name is Andrew Ormerod, and I'll be one of the facilitators of tonight's webinar. And we've also got Sarah Harris online, who will be helping with the webinar in the background. So,
hello, guys.
There you go. That was a perfect cue. Well done, Sarah.
So good evening, everybody. Our hashtag for tonight is hashtag CPDme. Any questions that we're going to put and link you to your Twitter feed. So when you ask your question, if you want us to follow you on Twitter, please give us your hashtag and just follow us and retweet over the evening session. Thank you.
In relation to the evidence for tonight's CPD, you'll take part in the webinar, and then what will happen is we will issue a certificate, and that will come out automatically. We normally email it within 48 hours. If you are a member of CPDme, some little magic will happen because we will drop a copy of the certificate and also the recording directly into your CPDme portfolio, which makes it uber simple for you to manage your learning and development. All that you then need to do, of course, is drop into your CPD dashboard and reflect upon your learning experience. And we really do ask that you do that. Collating CPD is not just about holding certificates and PowerPoints and presentations. It really is about reflecting upon your learning experience, but more importantly, documenting how that might influence or change your practice for the future. And so, without further ado, I think you've heard enough about the system. I'm going to hand you over to Martin. Are you there, Martin?
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name's Martin. I'm one of the Advanced Paramedics with NWAS, Northwest Ambulance Service, and I'm based in South Manchester. So tonight's little webinar is about the role of NWAS's trauma cell in helping to coordinate major trauma or the response to major trauma in the area. Lots of ambulance services have their own dedicated little function in EOC. Some call it a clinical coordination desk, but ours is called the trauma cell. So the plan for this evening, the next half hour or so, I just want to talk through some definitions around major trauma. I'll also go through NWAS's own Pathfinder triage tool, which we use for major trauma. And then it's not just about me doing all the work tonight, so I will present some scenarios to you, and you'll have the chance to answer some questions accordingly, whatever you think. I will say now, there's no right or wrong, so you're not being tested. And then I'll just round up with a couple of points as well. What is major trauma? As far as NICE 2016 and NICE guidelines are concerned, major trauma, they define it as an injury or a combination of injuries that are life-threatening or could be life-changing because they may result in long-term disability. And you'll see this definition pretty much everywhere you look about major trauma, whichever document you look in or article. And the way major trauma is defined in hospital is with something what's known as an injury severity score, and anything above a score of 15 is deemed as major trauma. Now, obviously, this is an in-hospital tool, which has got a very complicated method of scoring. And basically, what happens is every injury that's found in polytrauma is assigned a abbreviated injury scale score, an AIS score, which is allocated to one of 6 body regions, which are the head, face, chest, abdomen, extremities, which also includes the pelvis, and any external injuries. The highest AIS score from each body region is used, and the 3 most severely injured body regions, they have their score squared and then added together to produce the ISS score. That probably, well, many reasons why we can't use this pre-hospitally, but because we obviously don't know the extent of injuries, but it'd probably take too long to work out. As an example, so a patient with a cerebral contusion would have an AIS score of 3, a flail chest would score a 4, fractured femur a 3, and obviously no injuries is 0. Any injury which is deemed to be unsurvivable is scored a 6. And if a 6 appears in any of the scoring in the ISS calculation, the ISS score is automatically by default assigned to a 75 score, which is the highest. And this system has been in place since 1974. So does seem to be grounded in practice, and so it's what hospitals tend to use. So many of you will know what the early drivers for change were when it came to major trauma. 2007's document, Trauma Who Cares, which came from the National Confidential Inquiry for Patient Outcomes and Death, and then a couple of years later followed by the National Audit Office document into major trauma care in England. And basically what they both found was major trauma as a thing was extremely poor pre-hospitally and in hospital. So the 2007 report, the confidential inquiry one, that stated that 60% of major trauma patients received a standard of care that was, in their words, less than good practice. Some of the other findings from both these reports include the survival rates for major trauma patients varied significantly between hospitals, and back then obviously we were taking all these patients to the nearest A&E unit. And then there was the consultant cover in the hospitals, which was patchy, and then obviously different times of the day with consultant cover. And basically the delivery of major trauma care lacked any sort of coordination, and then that led to delays and obviously affected treatment, diagnosis, treatment, and then obviously onward rehabilitation for the patients. And the main recommendations from certainly the National Audit Office, some of the main recommendations included this coordination of specialist services for major trauma, and also the idea of trauma networks, major trauma networks, to work in conjunction with the ambulance trusts to help deliver a better service. And from that, all ambulance trusts have developed to formulate triage protocols for all major trauma. And these days, the trauma networks do use the TARM, the Trauma Audit Research Network data, to help benchmark performance. So moving on, this is a NWAS's trauma cell. This is probably the tidiest you'll ever see this desk. And basically, we're based up at the Lancashire Control Room at Broughton, outside Preston. So obviously we have several screens, mapping system, communication system, and just on the right behind the screen there, you can see what appears to be a very embarrassed looking dispatcher. So we have all sorts of so what do we do? So access to an advanced paramedic 24/7 with dispatch support, which is when you're new to these systems, it's all important. From our position there, we're able to allocate the appropriate response to the incident. If something has been identified as a major trauma incident, some are obvious, some are not so obvious, we're able to send or help send the appropriate response. Now that could be a senior paramedic or an advanced paramedic. And obviously we've also got access to other specialist support, as in we have a fantastic basics team around the Northwest. We also sit on our desk there, just behind the other dispatcher, where HeliMed, they have a dedicated dispatcher. We have access to three helicopters in the Northwest, and at the moment they only operate in daylight hours. We also do pinch occasionally Northeast or Great North ambulance, and occasionally Yorkshire. The main idea behind the advanced paramedic being in the trauma cell is to support the decision making that is going on at scene. So whether that's sending extra support to go to scene, whether it's speaking to clinicians on scene if we've got a chance, and then just helping basically to coordinate the services for the patient. And then once the patient's all neatly packaged, we'll take the pre-alert details from the crew on scene, and we'll pass it to the receiving hospital. And obviously, if that's major trauma, through to the red phone in the A&E of the trauma centre or the trauma unit, and we'll speak. It's a clinician-to-clinician pre-alert, so we'll generally speak to team leader, or occasionally the consultant to receive the patient. And then what is vitally important is that we're in a position to be able to feed back to crews who've done the job, been through the incident, depending on the type of incident it was, and offer that peer support, which is all important. So I just want to run through quickly what we use in Northwest as our sort of kind of triage protocol for major trauma. It's called Pathfinder. It's split into 4 categories. This top yellow box is the catastrophic category. So where our patient doesn't have a manageable airway, or their breathing is unmanageable, or they have a catastrophic hemorrhage, which is unmanageable. That is this patient is going to a major trauma center or a major trauma unit, whichever is nearer. And that will depend very much on where you are within the Northwest. Okay, if we can get past this box, then the next category down is the physiological sort of category. So we've gone past the catastrophic bit. The patient, have they got their respirate? So is it below 10? Is it above 30? Their systolic blood pressure is at 90 or below 90. And then we're looking for patients who've got have they got a reduced GCS? And in NWAS, we're looking at 12 or less. And that is a GCS associated with the injuries or the mechanism of injury they've gone through. Again, if that triggers, it's major trauma. But the advice is, the guidance is that they should go to the major trauma center. The trauma units are just for the catastrophic category of patient, the top one, where they should be, where they should receive, basically to be packaged up to onward travel to the major trauma center. And obviously got that big red box on the left there to get in contact with a trauma cell or to see if they can have extra support on scene. But the proviso is that we are not delaying transport for this patient. This patient needs to be in an A&E receiving that specialist care. So going down again the flow chart into the more so the physiological category. So we're looking at injuries now. So specifically flail chest, penetrating trauma, and then obviously the body region is identified there. Fractures to 2 or more of the long bones. And obviously we've had to say humerus and femur. We do get calls for, an injury that is a tib and fib injury, which wouldn't necessarily trigger, but obviously you have to take it all as a global picture. Look at the mechanism of injury as well. Amputation, ischemic limbs, and then suspected spinal injury with a new onset of motor deficit. And then this is the point where we're looking at history. What's happened to the patient? So have they been through a dangerous or a significant mechanism? Sadly, has there been, in an RTC, for example, death in the same passenger compartment? Frail or elderly, and I'll speak a little bit more about that in a few minutes. Is the patient on anticoagulants? A pregnant patient, 20 weeks or more, or other clinician concern? We do receive a lot of phone calls from crews on scene who have got a specific concern about it could be the mechanism, anything at all. It's something that is just not quite sitting right with the patient, and they want to have a chat to talk it through with the AP on the trauma cell. And obviously, after a chat with ourselves, we'll say yes, major trauma, or no, and it'll be to the nearest A&E. We do have triage protocols for children and for burns patients. I won't go through the burns one now, but I will just very quickly again go through children. Again, the catastrophic, which is the which hasn't changed, the catastrophic category. Further down, it changes obviously with children. So we've got the age and the parameters for the respirate and pulse on the left there. So we're looking at respirates, if it's abnormal for their age, the cap refill time, if it's delayed, and again a GCS of 12 or less. And then obviously the physiological injuries as well. A lot of the same stuff there again. all the time asking the crew on scene, just a prompt, do you need extra support on scene? Whether that be via a phone call to ourselves, or are you going to request a senior paramedic, advanced paramedic to scene? We also obviously have our consultant paramedics, basics. We have a whole host of clinicians we can also send to scene. And the last box with children, again, it's all about clinician concern. Is the behavior of the patient, is it inappropriate? Are we really worried about this patient? And obviously parents can be a big help here. They're either still concerned, obviously concerned that the child has been through an accident of some description, but that just, you know, we all hear this phrase, they're just not right. Mechanism still there, and obviously our children's triage tool, Pathfinder, for major trauma goes up to the age of 16, up to the 16th birthday. So pregnancy still has to be in there. And again, if it's not major trauma after a chat, then it's off to the nearest A&E. So I just want to go back to adults and just talk a few minutes about frail and elderly. I think we've all seen recent articles, documents, whether that be via social media or through service communications, about the sort of increase in major trauma in the elderly, or silver trauma as it's now termed. Kehoe and colleagues in 2015 recognised that the age of the patient that's suffering major trauma is going up from the age of 50 all the way up to the age of 100. The graph is going up for the patient groups in that age bracket, and now the predominant mechanism is a fall of less than 2 meters. In Manchester itself, when we look at our town data from the networks, the average age of a major trauma patient has risen from 57 to 63. It's a thing that I think, just my own personal opinion, and I think that ambulance trusts do need to probably have to focus on a little bit more now. Whether we have to design a separate triage tool for the elderly, that's probably a piece of work for someone else. Hopefully not me. So there are screening tools out there for elderly patients who do get to A&E as a major trauma patient. So, for instance, in London, then major trauma system, they have an ED screening tool for the elderly, which asks, is the patient aged over 70? And then it gets down, the next box down, sorry, I don't have a copy for it on the screen, is does the patient have any of these following injuries? Rib fractures, blood positive on a CT head, a significant soft tissue injury, pelvic fracture, spinal fracture or suspected spinal fracture, excuse me, or an unexplained hemodynamic status, sorry. So obviously CT head we can't do pre-hospitally, but certainly on scene and certainly on the trauma cell, we can be asking questions more about chest examination. Is there anything obvious on the chest? Does the patient appear to have any rib fractures? Pelvic fractures we can suspect, but I think the chest examination is probably the new thing that if we're not doing it already, we should be doing a little bit more. And certainly something I'll adopt in my practice now on a trauma cell is asking a few more pertinent questions in the elderly about chest trauma. So moving on, scenario time. So I'm going to put some scenarios up on the screen, and then Andrew, on his prompt, will put some questions up. So as I said earlier, it's not a right wrong thing. It's just your impression. It's just what you think when you first read the scenario. So the first scenario is it's a 14-year-old male. He's fallen 20 feet from a roof onto his feet. On ambulance arrival, he's mobile. He says he's pain-free, and he appears well. When they're taking his obs, they're all within his age parameters. He's been GCS 15 throughout, no loss of consciousness reported. He's got a possible fracture of his left elbow, and nothing injury-wise that's really obvious. No previous medical history, no comorbidities, etc., no allergies. So, Andrew, put the question up, please.
I will indeed. So, scenario number 1. Does this trigger major trauma?
So it is just very quickly, for you, is this major trauma? There's no tricks.
Okay, we've got a few more people to go. We're nearly there. 64% have voted. Come on, guys. Just simply click yes or no. If you're on a touch screen, click yes or no, and then we should get you on to 75%. A few more seconds.
You got like countdown music.
Yeah. We'll have to pay royalties now for that, Martin.
Oh no. Well,
okay, so we're going to close the poll. We've got 85% voted, and the poll is closed. And there are the results, Martin.
Oh, look at that. So 53% said yes, and 40% said no. I really didn't want to put a don't know box in there because that may have had more answers. But let's go back. This I dealt with this job a couple of years ago now. Oh, it sticks in my mind. This. So basically, it was as seen on screen. There was no major trauma, and the patient was fine. I want to get that in straight away. There's no tricks here. So after discussion with the crews on scene, I think there was 3 paramedics on scene, including Helimed. And I was quite new at the job then. So I discussed it with another AP who was also on trauma cell. And between us all, we decided it wasn't major trauma, it didn't trigger. And we sent this patient to the nearest ED, which just so happened to be a trauma unit, but that's neither here nor there. The consultant wasn't happy that this patient was coming to his hospital and should be going to Manchester Children's Hospital as the trauma centre. So what followed was a debate and a terse conversation on the phone about why we were saying, well, for us it doesn't trigger major trauma, and these are the reasons why. But what stuck in my mind is what he said was they'd been told by the trauma network, he said, that a child who had gone through a mechanism of interest, and I'll always remember the phrase, a mechanism of interest, should go to the major trauma centre. Now, I kind of see his point, but if we're making a joint decision here that this child did not trigger major trauma, so this patient was turned away at the door, which was rather poor, and family were following the ambulance, thinking everything was fine, and they get to hospital and find that little Johnny, or whatever his name is, now on his way into the centre of Manchester. So that was an interesting one. So moving on to scenario 2. Ooh, Andrew, my button's not working.
Bottom left-hand corner, just hover your mouse.
No. All right, it's old-fashioned. Let's see. Okay, so second scenario. Again, there's no tricks. Okay, so 34-year-old male who's been deliberately run over by a car. And witnesses can state and be verified that the car has travelled over his whole body, accelerating away 20 to 30 miles per hour. On arrival of the first, I think it was an RV, you got to see him first. This patient is pale, he's clammy, he's sat down on the curbside. Initial set of obs, pulse 150, respirate 44, sats on air of 83%. And he's got a slightly reduced GCS on voice, eyes 4, voice 4, movement 6. So, Andrew, Maestro, second question, please.
Okay, so what intervention would you first consider? You can only choose one of them. So again, if you're on an iPad or a mobile device, just simply click one of the answers. If you're on a Mac or a PC, just wave your mouse and give us your results. Lots of Twitter activity tonight.
Oh, good. I will say that Andrew and I disagreed about this earlier.
Ooh.
And again, it wasn't, someone wasn't wrong. It was just,
I was going to consult Professor Sir Keith Porter on his opinion, but unfortunately wasn't able to come live on the webinar tonight.
Okay.
68%. And that's exactly what these webinars are for, Martin. As we discussed, it's all about debating. Now is the time to debate this as opposed to being sat at the side of the patient. 80% voted up to now. Come on, guys and girls. What I have noted is a lot of people logged on tonight who are doing other things than watching the webinar, like Google searching and not paying attention. Sarah's just
delivery.
Yeah. So I'm going to close the poll now.
Oh, okay.
And there's the results.
Okay. So, Andrew, that's what you put, wasn't it?
Interesting.
So, for me, what's causing his SpO2 to be vastly reduced? With a pulse rate of 150, a rest rate of 44, and a mechanism that has been verified that he suffered significant torso blunt trauma. So for me, and I'm just putting it out there, chest decompression here for a possible tension pneumothorax. So again, it's this actually did happen some time ago now. The crew did decompress the chap's chest, and it resolved, certainly the low SpO2. So that, for me, that is, and again, I'm not saying anyone who's put administered O2 was wrong. You're clearly right. But I think we're talking about, perhaps I worded the question a bit wrong, but from a life preserving intervention, I think the chest decompression probably could go hand in hand with the O2 administration. Shall we sit on the fence with that? Okay, so third scenario. Oh, I apologise if anyone can hear a crying baby in the background. So scenario 3. 50-year-old female. She's been a victim of a domestic assault. She's been physically assaulted, punched in the head. She's intoxicated, agitated, and she's beginning to repeat phrases. She has some significant swelling to her face. Her left eye is closed over. So, Mr. Ormerod, can we have there's a 2-part question to this? So, can we have the first question, please, or the first part?
Okay. So, scenario 3, part 1. On first scan, does this trigger major trauma? Simple answer: yes or no. Wow, that's super fast voting. They certainly get the hand of voting now. We're up to 55, 65. There's a debate on Twitter to whether that was a crying baby or a dog.
It was a baby, and my sister-in-law's here with her baby.
That could be part 4.
I'd lock myself away, but it's not. Obviously,
okay,
soundproof.
we're nearly there. Yeah. At least we know it's live, don't we? That's the thing with live broadcast. Okay, we're up to 80%. I'm going to close the poll.
Oh, there we go.
So there we go. So I'm going to share the results.
Oops, sorry. Okay, again, so it's kind of mixed. It's kind of 50-50. Well, it isn't. It's 60-40. But okay, so most people, the majority think that it doesn't trigger major trauma. I'm not going to argue that it is or it isn't. This is a common incident that we'll be asked for our opinion on. So obviously we'll ask for a set of odds. And if there's any friends or family of this lady on scene, can they kind of, how much has she had to drink? This repeating phrases thing, and the agitation. How new is it? Is it because of the injury? Are we suspecting a closed head injury? What are her pupil reactions like? Are there any other drugs involved? There's a whole suite of questions that will they interrogate? Not interrogate is perhaps too strong a word, but we'll ask of the crew on scene. So yeah, it's just basically about information gathering, but in a supportive manner. When I said interrogate, I didn't mean and what is this and what is that. But anyway, so Andrew, second part of this question, if you don't mind, please. And this is the contentious bit, and I'm waiting for the Twitter storm
There's going to be one. So, scenario 3, part 2. If immobilising this patient, would you attempt placing a hard collar on if she is still agitated, or if she's still presenting agitation? Yes, I was typing it on the fly, I think, this afternoon, wasn't I? So, simple answer, yes or no. And the voting is already up to 65%.
Oh,
Twitter,
love it.
they're already starting to contend on Twitter. Just remember, you can put your questions and your comments on Twitter, but just remember to hashtag CPDme, and we'll try and answer them later if we don't get a chance to. 81% voted now. Martin, are you ready for the results?
Oh, go on, countdown.
Da, 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 da.
Ooh.
Ooh, interesting.
Ooh. Okay. So I suppose the first thing to say is, would you attempt? You probably would, but are we thinking that this patient, if they are agitated, repeating phrases, have they got a rising intracranial pressure? Are we going to make matters worse by putting a hard collar on? Lots of evidence out there to suggest it's bad for you. I know a few people who think they all should be binned, but I'm not naming names. So it's one for debate, and it's one for continuing debate. So a crew would say to me, look, we'd like to try and immobilize this patient, but she's quite agitated. She won't lie down. Every time we try and lie her down, she's sitting up again. Or, for example, every time we try and put the collar on, it's making her worse. She's trying to rip it off. Then, you know, in situations like that, absolutely not. You're going to do more harm than good. There's no benefit in it. So in that situation, I would be advising, look, we've tried, document we've tried. We're taking the collar off. If the patient is still resistant to lying flat on a scoop, then again, document it. We've tried, and make sure you hand this over when you get to A&E or wherever you're going to, whether it's the trauma centre or local A&E. So yeah, that one's for continuing debate. So last scenario, and again, there's no right or wrong answers, folks. So scenario 4 is a 25-year-old motorcyclist involved in an RTC. He's been ejected at high speed. When crews arrive, he's in traumatic cardiac arrest, blunt traumatic cardiac arrest. I should have put that in there. I do beg your pardon. Now a complex PA, right around 30. ALS has commenced. He's packaged nicely. Binder in place, TXA. There's been an AP on scene playing with a scalpel. Bilateral thoracostomy. So the decision is where to go. Wherever you are in the Northwest, and I don't think this is going to be in the centre of Manchester. So you are 30 minutes east from a major trauma unit. Don't forget, we are dealing with a patient in the catastrophic, the top yellow box of our Pathfinder triage tool. They are 30 minutes east to the major trauma unit and 40 minutes west to the major trauma centre. Andrew, last question.
Last question. Scenario number 4. Which direction do you go? Do you go east to the major trauma unit, which is 30 minutes away, or do you go west to the major trauma centre, which is 40 minutes away? Easily voted, yes or no? I know.
Who spells centre like that in this country?
Because it could be American. So we're up to 70%.
So again, please don't think there's no right or wrong answer. There's rationales for both. So
lots and lots of voting going on. We're nearly there. Close poll. There we go. Are you ready for the results?
Ooh. There's some sitting on the fence. Again, I didn't want to put a third option in of, you know, terminate on scene. So pretty much 50-50 split, 52-48. Again, I would like to send this patient to the major trauma centre, but I can perfectly see the rationale for going the other way and going to the trauma unit for the patient to have life-saving interventions for hopefully packaging for onward travel to the major trauma centre. So again, I have a preference, but I would not criticize a crew for going east as much as I want them to go west, but hey ho. So there's just a few scenarios that, you know, we tend to deal with on a pretty much a day-to-day basis. So just a reminder of what we do in the trauma cell as advanced paramedics. We're there we're available 24/7. We have our dispatch support who are wonderful. We can get the right response to the scene if it's available, and we can certainly request that a vehicle or a senior paramedic, advanced paramedic go into another job. It's a balance, isn't it, of where they're going to be best served, that job or to this major trauma job. Access to basics, of course, who are wonderful human beings. Get my plug in. Obviously, we've got HeliMed in daylight hours. As I said, we've also got Great North access to Yorkshire. And I forgot to mention, we also have access, or we can request Coast Guard, who fly 24 hours a day. And again, I'll reiterate the point, it is all about support decision making on the active incident, what's right for the patient, and about where they go. Coordinate everything on scene, despite the fact that we're remote, and then doing the clinician pre-alert, and then feedback and peer support. So it's all encompassing, really. So I've come to the end. I want to say thank you. And everyone needs a bit of Bill Murray every now and again. So that's me done, folks. Any questions?
Okay, I think Sarah is going to ask some of the questions. Are you there, Sarah? Maybe, maybe not. She's gone for a cup of coffee.
No, I was here all the time listening. No Google searching for me. Martin, we do have a few questions, but there's been a couple that have been around your role, really, and what qualifications, or how do you become sort of an advanced paramedic? There's quite a few around that.
Okay. So NWAS took the decision a few years back to follow the College of Paramedics curriculum guidance for career progression. So diploma, I was going to say band 5 paramedic, that's changed to band 6. So then it was before a few months ago, band 6 paramedic was the senior paramedic. That's the title the senior paramedic team leaders we now we changed it to. And they were, the stipulation in the job was as a team leader, and aspiration, and the going on to do the degree. And then advanced paramedic, I think there's 42 across Northwest, so it's basically 3 areas, 40 in each area, and obviously master's level education. So there's a progression that you can go through once you become a paramedic if you wish. That's basically the route all of us have taken, really, of being, an old technician or EMT2, up to paramedic, senior paramedic, now advanced paramedic.
Thanks, Martin. I think one of our webinars later in the year is going to be around the clinical leadership model that NWAS have taken on board. So hopefully we'll be able to discuss that further. Couple of questions around merit and basics and HEMS. So I'll ask one, but it will feed into the next one. Do NWAS have a merit team, nighttime HEMS that work during the night hours like West Mids Ambulance Service do?
Not yet. We are developing an enhanced care, a pre-hospital enhanced care model, which will include, I believe, but my information is a bit sketchy on this, which will include the merit docs or increase the scope. HEMS, I'm not too sure about flying nighttime. I really don't know that one. But the merit, their capabilities are going to go 24/7. So when they're not flying on helicopters, as far as I'm aware, they will be on a car based with, I've heard, an advanced paramedic. It's very much in its infancy, and it's very much, I think, a scoping practice at the moment. But yes, the the drive is there in the trust now to do it. It is going to happen over the coming year or couple of years. So yeah, we don't have the West Mids Care team, I think they're called. We don't have a similar model to that just yet, but we will have in the future.
That's great. So leading on from that, there's a Robin has asked, my paramedic practice has majored in search and rescue, and having heard Martin discuss the tasking of air ambulance asset day only, I am interested to see how or they would request a SAR helicopter, having worked closely with both Southwest Ambulance Service in Cornwall and Glasgow. We had excellent communication links with both organisations who frequently requested helicopters and air rescue coordination. So a very similar question really around that nighttime cover.
Yeah, and sadly it's not there at the moment. I have forgotten to mention, and I do apologise now, our mountain rescue teams who we do have on call for us 24/7. So we do have them. Again, flying at night is not something that we currently do. I don't know what it'll take to do that, I'm afraid to say. I don't know.
Maybe a future webinar is somebody from the air ambulance coming and talking to us. So what are your thoughts, Martin, in the administration of TXA for closed head injuries in elderly patients taking anticoagulants?
Oh, quizzes. There's no evidence to say that. I think the information we have is that there's no evidence to say there's any benefit, and there's no evidence to say there's any harm. So we've just taken the stance that we don't give it. There is a lot of work. I mean, if the evidence was there, fine. I just don't think there's evidence there. But in other countries, they use TXA for daft things, well, relatively minor things. Like in Japan, they use TXA for headaches. So I think there's more work to be done, basically, in evidence gathering. So yeah, whilst the evidence isn't there, then no, then let's not give it.
Okay, so we have one of our lovely CFRs, Dave Hartford, has asked a question. If a CFR was to arrive on scene and suspected the patient had a major trauma, yet backup was some time away, could we call the trauma desk for immediate advice?
Yes, definitely. And then obviously, depending on the, a lot of our CFRs also work in the trust as EMT1s, paramedics, etc. So there'll be a quick discussion about scope of practice, and then we can see what we can do.
That's great.
And we'd also liaise with the EOC, the control room, and say, look, this is confirmed major trauma. Let's get a wriggle on.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Right, so another question, and it goes back to your role again. And I know that some of the advanced paramedics have been on recent courses, so this will be a good one to answer. So what would you be able to expand on the clinical skills that an advanced paramedic brings to the scene of a major trauma compared to a senior paramedic and a paramedic?
Okay, so we'll start with paramedics. So that follow what JCalc drug formulary, so the TXA, and then obviously all the other major interventions for major trauma, so binder, immobilisation, etc. So just thinking about major trauma, I suppose the one drug is the TXA. Then senior paramedic, in a patient who's GCS3 is able to gain IO access with the easy IO gun, and then administer drugs through that route. But no other drugs that I'm aware of. No, there's no other drugs. Quickly thinking about it. Throw me this question. And then the APs, once they're seeing same drugs, we can, again, easy IO. We've got surgical airway capability in traumatic cardiac arrest, mainly blunt force trauma. We can do thoracostomy. We just got that ability earlier this year. Yeah, that's probably.
That's it.
I'm going to miss some. I'm going to get told off by my colleagues.
I'm sure they'll tell us on Twitter what.
But obviously, there's the with the senior paramedics. and then the advanced paramedics. It's the senior clinician on scene. It's that supportive decision making. And I think AP certainly, I'm not being cruel, we're generally not, well, I feel like I'm last of the party. I'm like the eventual response vehicle. So it's that ability to get that global overview of the incident, that ability to take a step back, take it all in, make sure this, that, and the other's been done, suggest other things that haven't been done just yet. Just have that clinical overview for the patient and a bit more focus maybe, because people do get task focus on, these are stressful jobs. We all want the best for the patient. And as people get task focused, they kind of not miss things deliberately, but something else hasn't been done. So we're able to take that step back and just refocus minds really.
Thank you for that. Oh, go on.
I was going to say, if you want to ask a question live to Martin, you can pop your hand up and I will unlock your microphone so you can ask Martin a question live. Martin, I've got Steve Kremin, who I'm just going to unlock his microphone. Are you there, Steve?
Hello.
Hi, Mr. Krem.
Hello, mate.
I'm good. How was your holiday?
It was good, thank you. It's good, thank you. Great webinar. Well done, mate.
Thank you.
I just kind of want to, and I put on on the text, it's a really good opportunity to talk about respiratory rates. And you kind of, in the second scenario, I think it was, is that we've both had, I'm sure, on the trauma cell, we've had pre-alerts with very deranged injuries, and you ask for respiratory rate and they'll say 16 or 18, which is not right. I think it's a really good opportunity to promote respiratory as the best indicator of chest injuries. Yes. And I've had patients with thorax with respiratory rates of about 44, but are still talking in sentences, which you don't normally see with medical patients. But yeah, just to promote the need to do respiratory rate in all trauma patients, well, all patients, but all trauma patients, and it's absolutely a barn door for an indication for major trauma. Maybe not even over the 30, even high 20s is usually a good indication. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, it's important to know that is for all patient groups. So Keith Porter spoke at the College of Paramedics last week in Solihull, and he was specifically talking about elderly trauma. But it struck me because he mentioned the chest examination is all important and respirate. But I think this is something we should be, as you say, promoting for all patient groups. It's not just the young and the old. But yeah, we've all had those jobs where there's something, the respirate is high without any real obvious reason. And then all of a sudden they've got this tension pneumothorax. So yeah, no, I agree, Steve. It's time to promote it, and I think we're just creating work for ourselves really now, aren't we?
Okay, we have got another question for you. Tim Croft, are you there and can you hear us? Hello, Tim? No.
I actually didn't ask for a question, guys, if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you now, Tim.
But don't worry. Right, just one of the questions I'd like to ask is, I've obviously activated trauma cell on several occasions. Once delivering the patient and we've moved on to the next job, I've never actually received any feedback. Is there a mechanism or system that we can use so we can get positive feedback?
Well, there's many ways that we give feedback. Specific patient feedback, it's hard sometimes. We can try and send, if we've got a senior clinician available, another AP available in the area, is it possible to go into hospital a few hours later and just check up and see how the patient did? If we're not able to do that, we do have to wait to see if anything comes back through the major trauma networks, if we can find out that way. That's feedback about the patient. My gist on the webinar, on the presentation, was about feedback for the crews, because we'll get a sense in the trauma cell of that job went well. We got all the information we needed. The crew handled it perfectly well, very professionally. Yeah. It was slick. There was no delay on scene, and they went to the right place, made all the right decisions. with close support. So the feedback there is, I thank you guys, you know, whether it's drop an email to their local AP just to say, you guys have gone through this job, can you just speak to them and say, well done, thank you very much. Whether it's to be able to get someone to go to A&E, not all these jobs go well. I recently dealt with a job in Manchester, it didn't go well. The patient sadly died at hospital, but I knew the crews on scene had done their best, but they went to the hospital with the patient, and I was able to send one of my senior paramedic colleagues in just to see how they were doing. And I think that's important for crews, is that even when they've got to A&E, where possible, I can't say it happens all the time because it doesn't, just with activity, but we can try and send someone along just to see how they're doing, just to have a bit of a debrief, which is important in medical jobs as well. But just talking about major trauma, debrief is very, very important. If what went well, what didn't go as planned, and it's just that ability, that facility to be able to do that. I think at hospital is vital for crews sometimes. And I think it's that feedback that I was talking about, really. It is difficult a lot of the time to get patient feedback directly, because once they're in the hospital, it's very difficult with, obviously, confidentiality issues to find out how the patient's done. So, yeah, I don't think there's any formal mechanisms within the major trauma networks to find out how patient X did, unfortunately.
Okay. Cheers, Martin. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks very much for that question, Tim. We have got another quick question for you. If I can scroll up the list, I have to say you have got some record numbers on the webinar tonight.
Yes, I've just tweeted about that. In fact, one of the questions is asking them, they're so impressed with your talk, they want you to write their essay for them.
I can't say I've Harvard references, I'm sorry.
Okay, Emma Orford, are you there, Emma? Can you hear us?
Yeah, hi Andy, I can hear you.
Okay, you're live with Martin now.
Okay, hi Martin, I've been listening to you, excuse me, whilst I've been eating my evening meal.
I've got mine to come yet.
This is a question about immobilisation of patients who's been involved in an RTC. I personally, this is a bit of a grey area. So my question is, what is the preferred method of immobilising a patient who has been involved in an RTC, who is presenting with C-spine tenderness but is able to extricate themselves from the vehicle?
Yeah, good question. Thanks very much. So the official answer would be, if they're able to extricate the GCS-15 throughout, no loss of consciousness.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so no distracting injuries, no intoxication.
Yeah.
Then let's get them to walk out.
Right.
Because the patient, the evidence is beginning to show, and now this is only my personal opinion before someone more senior than me gives me the curly finger. There's lots of evidence now saying that where the patient satisfies the criteria we just mentioned, they're able to extricate themselves. They will support their neck better than we will with the care, the hard collar, yabba yabba. And they will get themselves out far quicker than us in the fire service will. And the car will be in a better state. So yeah, I think we're not, and I use the phrase loosely, not too clinically concerned. And they have developed, is it a nuanced set of C-spine pain, a delayed onset, or is it since the point of injury? And you have to take the global view of the mechanism as well. Have airbags deployed? What's the state of the cars? The A-frame bent? What sort of speeds are going? And taking all that into consideration, am I going to immobilize this patient? So in Northwest Ambulance Service Practice, we have our self-care pathways for 6 specific ones, and one of them is for minor neck injuries. And it basically follows the Canada C-spine rules, which I know aren't perfect in an in-hospital radiological, but it's what we've got to use. And until something comes out that's better evidenced in the pre-hospital environment, we're left with what we've got. So to answer your question, if that patient has been no loss of consciousness, GCS-15, no distracting injuries, no intoxication, they're not mechanically trapped per se, then yeah, I would be more than happy to ask them to just support your own neck as you come, and they'll do a far better job than we ever will.
Okay,
Excellent.
thank you very much, Martin. Thank you.
Very good question, that, Emma. Well done. It's a question probably lots of people were thinking, and Martin hopefully has answered it for the majority of people. We've just got one more live open question, and that's from Lee Annie Wilcox. Are you there, Lee?
Hello.
Hello, Lee. We can hear you.
Hey, it's Leah. Sorry.
Leah.
Yeah, Leah. Just a question, really, for as you said about the patient that got run over by the car.
Mm-hmm.
And you said that you had a discussion whether you'd decompress first or you could give oxygen.
Yeah.
What is your argument for the decompression before the oxygen and vice versa? Like,
it's treating the cause. You got a higher degree. For me, this is having a high degree of suspicion that the cause of the low sats, that pulse and that respirate is a tension pneumothorax. The best way to treat a tension pneumothorax quickly is to stick a needle in the chest.
okay.
And that was my thinking behind the question. It probably wasn't worded the best, but that was my thinking. Because if you decompress the chest successfully, what's going to happen to the oxygen levels?
It's going to get better.
It's going to shoot up. So, and obviously the chap's been through major trauma, so he's always going to have 100% oxygen mask on. But if you don't decompress that chap's chest and have an oxygen mask on, his sats might come a little bit, but he's going to get more poorly.
Yeah, it's just that you said what you do first, so just generally.
Yeah, that's what it was very rushed this afternoon.
We had the debate earlier, didn't we?
Yeah, I do apologise for badly wording the question, but the thinking behind it is what's causing that low sats and those deranged obs. Treat the cause.
Okay. We had this discussion because I'm a student at the moment. I'm due to qualify quite soon. We had this kind of argument, debate, whatever you want to call it, at uni, and they were saying we got told that oxygen would be better first because of the good, and I use that as in quotation marks, the good side would get it's working harder, so therefore the oxygen would help out, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing. But how quickly is the oxygen mask going to go on and the chest going to get decompressed? They'll happen at the same time, won't they? So it's not a step-by-step approach. Oxygen must go on first. Bang. Okay, what's next? You're not thinking like that on scene, are you? It's dynamic. It's happening very quickly at a rapid pace. And if it's just you on scene, oh, okay. So, and you're waiting for ambulance backup, then it's, it will happen a little bit slower because you've only got one pair of hands, but it should be, for me, at the top of the list. But, closely followed by the oxygen. I'm sitting on the fence here. For me, this is a treat the cause scenario.
Yeah, okay.
Leah, thank you very much. That was a really good question. We had exactly the same debate earlier, didn't we, Martin? And in practice, you're quite right what you said. The probability is your colleague will be putting the oxygen on while you're considering to decompress the chest, and so it will happen synchronously.
Yes.
So, Sarah, have we got a couple more questions?
Yes, we have. We have so many, Martin. I don't know where to start. I tell you what, there's been a couple around the times. And so, for example, you get a major trauma. You're a couple of minutes from the major trauma centre. Would you scoop and run, or would you do some interventions and then go?
Scoop and run or stay and play, as they used to say.
Yes.
Are we dealing with a cardiac arrest?
Doesn't say.
Okay, let's assume we're dealing with a cardiac arrest. So your interventions are, so it's blunt force trauma, let's say. Your interventions are, in any particular order you wish to name: oxygen, chest decompression, pelvic binder, IV or IO access, TXA, immobilisation. So, how many people are on scene? It's as you say, it's a dynamic thing. You're 3 minutes away from a trauma unit. you're 15, 20 minutes away from a trauma centre. So you're in that catastrophic category at the top of the protocol. The triage tool, do those interventions very quickly, package them up as best you can, and then off to the trauma unit.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because I suppose if those things haven't happened, then it's going to take longer in A&E for those things to happen. Does that make sense?
Does to me.
Absolutely. We have probably only got chance for one more question. Sorry,
I've got one more here, and it's from
hundreds of questions.
Yeah. This one is from Ireland. It's from a medical technician in Ireland, so welcome. And it basically says, is a Pathfinder the same throughout the UK, or just designed for certain trust area or locations?
Yeah, everyone has. Pathfinder is a global term we have for our pre-hospital triage tools. We have a medical one, a trauma one. We have one for major trauma in adults and children, and we have one for burns, which would potentially be major trauma too. So it's our pre-hospital decision-making tool, and there's a suite of them. Other areas have their own variety of pre-hospital decision-making tool. We have Pathfinder. So there is something in, I won't stick my neck out here, all areas, I hope, to help make a decision on seeing about where's best for the patient to go, whether it be major trauma or medical, doesn't matter. But Pathfinder is definitely Northwest, and I think one or two other services use it, but don't quote me on that.
Okay, thank you. I'll hand you back over to Andrew.
Excellent. I have never seen as many questions in a webinar in all the time. And so what I'm going to do,
we do the questions at the same time. There's been that
many.
We
could be until 10 o'clock, no doubt. So what I am going to do, for those people who have asked questions, thank you very much, and I will forward the list of all your questions onto Martin's personal email. And if you have put your Twitter name in there, he will probably answer you back on Twitter. If he can do, I appreciate that. That he's very busy and he's took his time out tonight to speak to us. I will tell you about some upcoming free webinars that are coming, which are on the screen, as you can see. E-learning and the challenges of new technologies. So technology that's making learning easier. For example, tonight's webinar, there's an irony in there somewhere. Interaction in groups, how to get the best of people. Decision fatigue in crisis management, which I think is what Sarah referred to earlier. I think that he's already got about 600 people registered. One on advanced life support courses, one leading with a coaching style, and we have one that's registered on the trauma care website, which is traumatic cardiac arrests. I know that is in the 3,000 people registered already. And so to jump onto the webinars, it's either cpdme.com webinar or traumacare.org.uk webinar, and you can register there for free. As I said, for those people who are members of CPDme, it will drop straight into your CPD portfolio tonight. For those people who are not registered with CPDme, you can join at cpdme.com/join, and we will drop the certificate from tonight automatically into your CPD portfolio. What it does do, and my research back in 2009 suggested that it really does make recording CPD simple, because we've got a fabulous app that allows you to do it on the go. And so for me, audit is not a problem. It takes me 2 minutes to print it off. All the webinars, again, can be found at cpdme.com/webinar, and they're super easy. For those people who are on social media, we will pick the most influential tweeters tonight, and then Sarah will send you a tweet and we'll give you 150 quid worth of CPDme package, which gives you access to the trauma care recordings and all sorts of other goodies. For those people who are not familiar with trauma care, you can jump onto their website at traumacare.org.uk. And at the very end of the webinar, if you hang about for a second once the webinar closes, a quick poll will pop up. And if you're interested, we'll add you to their newsletter, so that's all the trauma care learning and development events we will inform you of. And I promise that we will have no spam, so we won't send you any junk. We will literally only send you what we think you'll be interested in. All that leaves me to do is thank you very much to Martin Rolls from Northwest Ambulance Service tonight.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Indeed, you can come back anytime, Martin, with a question list like that. And also thank you very much to my colleague, Sarah Harris, who's in the background there. Thank you, Sarah.
Very welcome, Andrew. Always a pleasure.
You say all the right things. For those people who are at work, please stay safe and enjoy the rest of your shift. For those people who are at home, go and pour yourself a nice cup of tea, relax, and thank you for taking part in the CPD webinar. Good night. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.